in with you. You just heard Senator Cotton right there. It sounds like he doesn't expect the Justice Department to come forward with the evidence of whether or not President Obama ordered a wiretap on President Trump tomorrow. You've set the deadline for tomorrow, you and your colleagues. Do you expect the Justice Department to meet it?
Well, I don't expect we're going to see any evidence of this either. I agree with Tom Cotton. You know, there are one of two possibilities here. Either the president quite deliberately, for some reason, made up this charge, or perhaps more disturbing, the president really believes this. And here's where I think it's consequential, George. If 6 months from now the president should say that Iran is cheating on the nuclear agreement, if he's making that up, it's a real problem. If he's not making up and it's true, it's an even bigger problem, because the question is, would people believe him? Would American people believe him? Would people around the world believe him? And that has real-world consequences.
So are there any consequences for the Justice Department if they don't come forward with this information?
Well, first of all, is there information to be produced is one question. But more than that, we're going to have an open hearing on March 20th. We're going to be able to ask the director of the FBI, among others, is there any truth to this? Have they seen any evidence of this? They would be in a position to have to know. And I think on March 20th, if not before, we'll be able to put this to rest. But I don't think anyone really has any question about this, George. The only question is why the president would make up such a thing.
So you believe that FBI Director James Comey, who is coming before your committee on the 20th, will answer this in public on that day?
I do. And, you know, if the press reports are accurate that he asked the Department of Justice to knock this down and they refused for whatever reason, he may welcome the opportunity, but he'll certainly have that on March 20th. You
also heard Senator Cotton say he was citing the what the former Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, said last week. Not only had he not seen evidence of this wiretapping, but he also said he's seen no evidence of any kind of collusion or cooperation between Trump associates and Russians. Have you seen any kind of evidence like that?
Well, I was surprised to see the director state that so categorically. And I think, you know, here's where we are in the investigation, George, and obviously I can't talk about particular evidence, but it's not unlike the 9/11 investigation where you had a joint inquiry in that case and an independent commission. They were looking at who was responsible, and obviously it was al-Qaeda responsible, but they were also looking at whether the Saudi government, you know, to use parallel terms, colluded or had some kind of coordination or involvement in the attack on 9/11. Now, at the end of their investigation, they found some circumstantial evidence that indicated that may be true, but they couldn't corroborate it. I wouldn't want to reach a conclusion at the outset of our investigation as to whether we're going to be able to demonstrate collusion. Maybe we will, and maybe we won't. Maybe it existed, and maybe it didn't. But I do think it's our obligation to do everything possible in as nonpartisan a basis as possible to answer those very important questions. And I wouldn't start out by concluding one way or the other.
You also heard Senator Cotton say it may not be necessary to see President Trump's tax returns to complete this investigation. Do you agree?
I think if the evidence develops that one of the Russian tactics, and this was suggested, of course, in that dossier, is to financially entangle people as a way of exerting influence, if the evidence leads in that direction, then his tax returns will be pertinent to our investigation. But again, I think we try to develop the evidence, we follow that evidence where it leads, and not leap to any conclusions on the front end.
Are you convinced that this investigation is going to go forward in a complete way? I've seen that some of your colleagues on the House Intelligence Committee say that they're afraid that it's going to be a partisan exercise and they're going to walk away if that's what they see.
You know, to be honest, George, I don't know whether we'll be able to conduct this to its completion, whether we'll have the kind of bipartisan cooperation that we need. I do know this. It would be in the national interest for us to do so. If at the end of the day we produce two conclusions, a majority conclusion and a minority conclusion, that won't add any value at all. So I think it's clear it's in the national interest to try. And if we get to the point where we can't, I think it's our obligation in the opposition to speak out and say, this is not legitimate. We are being walled off from certain areas of investigation. But I think we owe it to the country to try. That's certainly my intention. You know, one of the, you know, significant obstacles we'll have is whether we have the resources devoted to do this in the way we should. And for that reason, I think we should have an independent commission. But I do want to give you one other update, George. I have been very critical of the FBI and their willingness to cooperate in the investigation. I can say that that's substantially changed, and I'm now very pleased at the level of cooperation we're getting from the FBI. I hope that continues. There's still more to be ironed out along those lines, but I think that's moved in a very positive direction.
Okay, Congressman Schiff.